and welcome back to a New Pace podcast. So, my name's Lesley, your host, and today we have a guest all the way from New Zealand, Tatiana Goden. She's a motivational life coach working with women to help them to improve their lives. And I'm really grateful for Tatiana to be here, so welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Lesley. Thank you for having me here today.
So, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. It's getting dark now here. It's almost 9 p.m. and yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. So that's the thing, isn't it? That like it's morning over in the UK, getting late in New Zealand, and that's what I love about the internet, that you can just have these conversations. You'd never dreamed of this sort of 20 years ago. So yeah.
Definitely.
So would you be able to just give us a general introduction to sort of who you are, what you do, how you help people? I mean, that's quite a big, that can cover a lot, but just as a bit of brief thing, first of all.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm originally from Spain. You might notice from my accent, but I've lived 14 years already in New Zealand. New Zealand is home for me now. And I am a scientist by training. I worked as a scientist for 20 years. But around 6 years ago, I had a moment of crisis, let's say, where I needed more than just working on my mind and on facts and facts all the time. I just needed more. I needed to connect with people. I needed to share. I had that feeling of I need to help people. And I took a course on life coaching that was completely life changing for me. I was like, this is what I want to do. It was so insightful for me, and I opened my business back then, and I really love working. I mostly work with women in their midlife, women looking for more joy and fulfillment in their lives. And sometimes it's interesting because some of my or most of my clients, they have what you would say, a happy life, everything going well, they have a good job, they have a lovely family, everything is going well, but they feel unfulfilled, and there's something missing in their lives, and they're just looking for what it is. It's kind of like what we call the midlife crisis. And for me, one thing, because I've experienced it myself as well, one key thing in those moments is to actually look inside. So it's a moment of trying to find who you are and who you were in the past as well. So sometimes it's not so much about looking externally, but looking at it internally. And one of the things that tends to happen is that these women start looking at their past, at their childhood, and start thinking, wow, I've lost the joy that I had as a little girl, and they start thinking about the things that they used to do, that they love to do, and for different reasons they abandoned it. And interestingly enough, it usually has to do with some kind of creative work. And I blame this on the educational systems all over the world, which they focus on, left brain and always, facts and logic and all these kind of things. And what tends to happen is, one way or the other, either someone told you, what are you doing? You will never be able to live out of your painting, let's say. Or sometimes it's yourself. You realize that studying is more important than your writing or your painting or your passion for playing an instrument or something like that. So what I specialize on is on rediscovering your passions, either from your childhood or something you've always loved to do, you feel drawn to, because for me that's the key to recover the joy and fulfillment. It's recovering a part of yourself that you have left behind, and as women that tend to be people pleasers even more so. So that's my big passion, to actually help women recover that part of themselves, because many of them have tried but it's just too hard, life is too busy. It's just too difficult to bring that back to your life. So that's the main thing that I do.
Yeah, that's great, and it's so important, isn't it, to be able to maybe do the things that really light you up and do those things. And what I'm hearing about is those layers of maybe women, like that midlife point where you're questioning things, and like maybe starting to question things, maybe things have changed, maybe there's life experiences that have happened, and that actually life being very, very, very busy, and feeling like, well, things are doing all right, but there's just something missing. There's just something
Hmm.
missing. So,
Yeah.
what sort of things could you say more about? Like, what do you notice going on for the women that you work with, or women in general that are at that point where they're busy doing everything, they're living life, they're functioning fine, perhaps, but then they've lost that spark, they've lost that passion. What do you notice?
Well, for me, it's quite clear that in most cases, it's a part of themselves that they've lost. They've actually abandoned the core of who they are. And that is why they are missing that joy in their lives, because who they considered themselves in the past is gone, um, because of fulfilling everybody else's needs, right? And having sometimes even studying a career that someone told you this is what you need to do because this is what is going to bring you success and so on. And we've dragged on, we've been doing that, we've been good girls for all this time and being responsible and doing what we need to do, but not what we love to do, no, not what comes from inside. And that's, for me, that's the key of what happens in our midlife. We just realize we're not ourselves. There's a big part
Yeah,
missing, and we have a bit of feelings of grief in a way. We're missing ourselves, and that's hard.
yeah,
That's really hard.
oh,
Um,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And I was sort of thinking about that midlife point where you may be looking, like reflecting on your life and thinking, maybe thinking about the time, like, impending, sort of questioning like how much time you've got and things like that, and questioning like relationships, and questioning like yourself, and that, that who you are at the core is so important, isn't
Mm.
it? But it made me think that just kind of there's a heaviness about that, isn't there? Of feeling that someone's lost their sense of who they are, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's really it's a very difficult moment, and as you're saying, there's all sorts of things happening around, right? Women might start considering changing their careers, or breaking up relationships that are not working, and all sorts of things happen around midlife. But for me, the key is recovering yourself, because once you're centered, once you're rooted on who you actually are, then it's much easier for you to see clearly your life. And as you're saying, um, consider what do you want to do the rest of your life. And many women actually completely change. They decide that they want to, I don't know, move to the countryside, or break up relationships, or start a new career, or I love, women that become entrepreneurs, women that actually recover that creativity from the past, and they suddenly become painters. And sometimes they can do it as a hobby, which is what I start doing with women, is actually to bring back slowly that passion to their lives. But some of them go even further and turn that into their career, and completely drop whatever corporate job, or whatever they have, and they become their own passion because they have recovered the core of who they are. But what I tend to say to my clients is that It doesn't matter, for instance, like in my case, my passion was writing, and I can share a little bit about how I recovered that, because that's one of the main reasons why I'm doing this work. For me, was so hard to bring back my passion for writing and to bring it regularly and daily in my life. It was so hard that now my passion is to help women bring back those passions from their lives, because I didn't have anyone to tell me what to do, and now I've figured out that there's actually a process and a technique how you can actually bring back that passion to your lives, to your life, without it being unrealistic, because that's one of the key problems, that people just want, the perfect scenario, and that doesn't happen. I think I've lost track of what I was
That's
trying
okay.
to
No,
say.
like what I was like what you mentioned there about your own creative writing, and you're also mentioning about doing all of these things and really healing inside, like really connecting with the core and who you are, and feeling like maybe feeling peace with who you are, and feeling that like that sense of kind of strength of self and confidence. And it
Exactly.
made me think about all of these times when maybe I've done things that have been fulfilling in the moment, but they've not had that lasting stuff. So, like, or when people have maybe changed careers or changed relationships or done something different, and then there's still something missing.
Yes.
And it might
Exactly.
be that there's somebody might be going, well, I'm gonna restore my passion for art, or for music, or like restart that hobby, but then there's still something missing. So this maybe makes me think of what you were touching upon about the method, like that
Hmm.
difference between chasing something in order to keep chasing something more, and kind of take time to pause, to be, and to have that sense of certainty about who you are and fulfillment.
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, that's a really good point. You know, when you're connected to your intuition, who you are, what's the core of who you are, and deep inside you if what you're doing is actually aligned with who you are, if it's aligned with your values. And there's nobody else that knows that except for you. So actually, one of the things that I tend to tell my clients is that, and it's usually the case, even their partners, their husbands, might not know that this passion is something that they had. Maybe, you have mentioned it in passing, but you're not giving it importance.
Yeah.
Or maybe you haven't even mentioned it. So nobody's going to know how important this is for you. Nobody except for yourself. So that's why it's so important that you do the work. It might be wonderful if you have people around you supporting you. If you have a partner that will say, don't worry, I'll take care of the kids while you take your time to paint or play your instrument or whatever, or go to this class. But it needs to come from you. And one of the pivot points in this process is actually the moment of commitment and the moment of making that a priority. Because we tend to be people pleasers and we are the last ones on the list, it's not going to happen unless you put yourself, your passion first. And that is actually what happened to me with my writing. So maybe I can share a little bit the story.
Yes,
Um,
please.
so I love writing since I was little. I love creating stories, creating characters, imagining how the stories would develop. And around high school, I completely abandoned it. And now thinking about it, I don't think anybody influenced me there. I think it was myself who actually realized that studying and having good grades was the important thing, and this was something, like a hobby, something for my spare time. But I didn't include it in my life. And after a few years, I started really missing it. There was this big part of me that was missing. So I started writing for myself. And there was a moment, actually, one of the big moments was when I was pregnant with my daughter. And I've actually read that it's quite typical with the hormones that women start becoming really creative, with lots of ideas coming in. And that's what happened to me. I wrote, some of my best poems and writings were from that period. And then I took part in a short story competition and I won the second prize, and I started thinking, wow, maybe I should keep doing this.
Fantastic.
But this is not the end of the story. So a few years later, I took a course on creative writing because I really wanted to take this course, and I loved every moment. And I loved, having my time to do my exercises, the whole idea of bringing that back into my life. But what happened is that I was then doing these exercises for my teacher. My teacher was expecting them, so I was a good student, I was a good girl, I was doing my exercises, and as soon as the course finished, I completely stopped writing. Now looking back, I realized what I was doing, right? So it happened 3 times, I would only write when I was taking the courses. And the third time, and this is a pivot point and I'm telling my clients about it, the third time I said, I am not stopping writing. I love doing this and I'm going to make sure I include it in my life. And that is the moment for me when I stopped being a people pleaser, when I said, this is important for me, and no matter what, no matter how much time, I'm going to include this in my life because it's this part of who I am. This gives me joy. And I started actually becoming a more joyful person. I started improving my relationships. I started feeling great about myself. And sometimes it was just because I had spent half an hour in the morning writing, So sometimes it's that little thing that brings you so much joy and fills your cup so much that you start seeing things differently, you start feeling differently. And it's so powerful and it's so almost magical. So that's pretty much my big moment. And as a second moment that I also tell my clients about is the moment where I told myself I am a writer. I gave myself permission to say I am a writer, even if I wasn't a published writer. I've recently published my first novel, A Trip Towards the Sunset, but I'm telling my clients, it doesn't matter if you publish, it doesn't matter if you have your paintings in an exhibition, it doesn't matter if it's all in a drawer. You're doing that for yourself, and you actually, in many cases, you identify more with that passion of yours, and especially a passion related to creative work, than with your job or than with any other role in your life. This is who you are. So this is, for me, these are my 2 powerful moments, and I think they're key, giving yourself permission to say, this is part of me, this is probably the most authentic part of me. And then the other one, of course, put yourself first in a way. Say, this is important for me. I need this. And I'm actually giving myself permission to take care of myself through my passion. Because I recently read a book about self-care. What was the name? Sustainable Success by Melinda Cohen. And she was saying there that actually taking care of yourself is actually, she was relating that to healthy boundaries, and she was saying no now is actually saying yes to a better version of you, saying yes to a quality version of you. Now I cannot pay you the attention that you deserve, but maybe we can talk tomorrow. So in a way, that is what we do when we do something for ourselves. It's like, now I need this to fill up my cup, and I'm going to feel better myself, but I'm also going to be a better person, I'm also going to improve my relationships. I'm also going to have a better day. I'm going to deal with things better. And another thing I tell my clients is about doing it first thing in the morning, ideally, because you make sure that you have included it in your life. Leaving it for last was what I was doing for years and years on end. My weekend, I had my tasks, and it included all sorts of, chores and, things with my daughter, all sorts of things, but it included writing as well. And I would tick, 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 be very happy that I had done all these tasks. But at the end of the day, I was too exhausted to do any writing, so I would drop that. By reversing that, so the first thing you're doing that for yourself, even if it's 15 minutes, that's why I say, even if it's starting with 15 minutes, that's okay, because you're filling up your cup. And no matter how the rest of the day goes for you, you're going to deal that better.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I really appreciate this. And just the differences between, like, what I'm really noticing there is there's a difference between following your passion because you're on a course, or because you're you feel that you should do it, you've chosen to do it, and you're like, oh, I will sign up to this art course, sign up to this creative writing course. You did that, and you were right. I'm doing all of this. I'm being a good girl. And that good girl kind of persona is so common, isn't it? Like, just so systemically so common. And then, like, that shift in motivation of embodying that identity of being a writer. It's like that. I am a writer. It's like it's not a small thing. It's not a job particularly. You can make it your career. You can make it your job. But it's more of an identity, and that's what I'm hearing from that. And
yeah, definitely.
I love that. And I think what I heard you saying about the morning thing at the moment, or more and more, in the world of productivity and getting stuff done and all of those, they have this thing called Eat the Frog. I can't remember where it's come from originally, but the idea of doing the hardest task first in the morning. However, actually, I've not got on board with that. What I end up doing, instead of getting up first thing and eating the frog, is I end up delaying my day until I sort of end up wasting my day, because I go, I've got to do that thing that's hard, and I end up not doing very much. Whereas this idea of getting up straight away, and one of the first things that you do in the morning is your passion, like for you, writing. That makes me think about, like, eating your pudding first when you go into a restaurant, or eat the ice cream, not the frog, and just feels fulfilling, and the rest of the day is gonna feel like I've done something for me. So yeah, I
Yeah,
really love that. Yeah,
yeah,
and I
yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
and I was
Sorry.
thinking about, what you said about being a scientist and then creativity, and feeling that, you know, the science was your way to go, and like you said about how it didn't feel like it was other people telling you to do the studying, but it would come from yourself. What would you say is the thing about that? Because were you doing that for a long time, or was that like quite a brief thing? Or
What do you mean now?
I'm curious about your maybe your pathway from being in science to then making the changes towards, like, developing your own passions and becoming a life coach yourself.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a little bit like, that hole that you feel when you have lost or abandoned that passion of yours. In a way, I was feeling a hole because science is also very creative, but it's very rigid in terms of being very based on facts and very logic. And I needed this interaction with people. I had this need to help other people, and especially with the experience I had with changing career and recovering my passion. So there was this big hole of, I need to do this as well. I mean, there are people who can combine the two things, and they actually do it quite nicely. In my case, it was at some stage it was clear that I needed to shift. I needed to move into something that was feeling more fulfilling for my soul. And that's a calling, I guess, in our midlives, right? That is the moment where we might actually completely throw to the rubbish, part of our life, and start actually thinking, this is not who I am. But we actually need to go through a process of accepting the decisions that we made at the moment that we made them, because if we look at them, they actually made sense, right?
Yeah.
I made this decision at this moment because of all these reasons, and this is part of who I am as well. So I think it's quite important to avoid this sense of inner battle, to actually accept all parts of our life, and understand that all of them are important. And actually, the people, or I believe the people that make go through their biggest transformation, are actually the people who are more inspiring and can help others more, right? They have gone through themselves through an immense transformation in their lives, and they know what it is like, how difficult it is, and then they feel inspired to help others to do that. So actually, sometimes, even if, as a child, this is what we love to do, and then we go to a completely different path and we do something completely different, and then at some stage we decide to go back to that, it was the only way, right?
Yeah.
Through this different path was the only way for you to come back to yourself. It wouldn't have happened in any other way. So in a way, life is quite interesting, right? It's in a way, it's kind of circular.
Yeah.
For some people, it's always quite consistent. But in my case, at least, the people I admire most are the ones that have gone through all sorts of very difficult changes and gone back to the core of who they are. And they're quite inspiring.
Yeah, it makes me think of a journey, like starting here and then
Yeah,
going off and going and taking a different path and exploring different things and then coming back on that path and then seeing it in a different way
yeah.
and approaching those passions and those interests in a different way. So, had you maybe continued? I had, if generally speaking, we continued like to carry on our passions and not stop them. Is there a risk of us doing it out of obligation rather than out of like, wow, I need to do this out of an urgency of like making out like it's going out of fashion, or like a real passion to write and have that experience where it can, on the surface it could feel like, I'm doing this is great, this is my thing, but then maybe not. I'm not sure like whether this makes sense, but yeah, like because I'd imagine that the gap from doing it as a child and then coming back with purpose and intention as an adult is really different. That sort of differentiation.
Yeah, definitely. You've raised a really good point there, and I guess it will depend on the case, but it might be that some people that have kept consistent with what initially was their passion, at some stage they're probably even pushing themselves into doing that, especially if it's a creative path, because it's very hard to make a living out of that. And I really admire people who have actually done that. But sometimes they struggle, and sometimes I know people who have actually questioned if that was the right thing for them. Whereas, as you say, if we choose a different path, but consciously we decide to go back to that, we're actually quite sure that that is what we want, and we are not so well. We might be scared of all the risks because there are always risks, but in a way, we have, gone round the circle, right? We have investigated looked at our fears, looked at the risks, looked at the ways we want to include it in our lives, and despite that, we have decided to jump. Sometimes we just incorporate it as a hobby, and sometimes we just leave completely our old lives and we start with our new lives.
That phrase "leap and the net will appear" came to my mind then when you said about jumping, and that can feel quite scary for people to go, this is what I really want to do, rather than it being like an add-on or a side thing, like just something that you do when you've got a bit of time, and like being able to prioritize that is so important, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I love that. Uh, I had forgotten that phrase, leap and the net will appear. That's so, so powerful. And yeah, it's a matter of prioritizing, and it's a matter of really understanding who we are. And it's a whole process that might take years to really find, your real and true spot within you. But it's so, so fulfilling. I mean, it's so wonderful to see people that have recovered that part of themselves and they feel so empowered. And sometimes they don't need to make any other big changes in their lives. And this is a huge change for them. But maybe they might keep with their jobs, they might keep their lives exactly as they are, but they have included that as part of their lives, and they're completely transformed. And people around them just say, "Wow, you look happy, you look fulfilled. What has changed?" Maybe they are not seeing that, but it's an inner change. It's an inner transformation.
Yeah. No, it's good, isn't it? I think there's something really important about that, isn't there? Just feel it. It feels like everybody's journey would be different on that. So what the fact that other people are seeing them maybe light up, or seeing them show up differently, and maybe, yeah, maybe act differently around other people, or more confident, and all of those sorts of things. So, yeah, what have you? I'm curious about what you've noticed. This is maybe more of a personal question rather than about the people that you're working with. I'm curious about what you've noticed within yourself or for your life, having reconnected with your creative writing. Are there things that you've noticed yourself?
Oh, totally. I feel more grounded. I feel more true to myself. I feel more connected with my, my little girl, let's say,
Yeah.
my me as a child,
Oh, yeah.
and more like my life makes more sense in a way because I've brought that back to my life. And one thing I wanted to say of what you've just talked about before is that some people think that they don't feel fulfilled, and they think they need to change everything. They need to move
Yeah.
countries, they need to break up with their partners, they need to change their jobs, they need to I don't know, start a new career, and anything like that. But sometimes, as we've been talking about, sometimes it's just reconnecting with that part of you that is missing, and that makes the whole of a difference. and maybe you don't need to change anything else. Maybe that's what was missing in your life. So that's what happened to me with the writing, and actually I'm actually slowly bringing back other passions. Like, for instance, dancing is another thing that I've always loved to do, and now I've incorporated that into my life. So in a way, it's like rebuilding yourself, right? Like
Yeah.
bringing back the pieces of the puzzle that somehow, due to life circumstances or whatever, you have left behind, and you're just bringing them all back to feeling more whole and more complete and more like your life as a whole makes more sense. This is how I was when I was little. This is how I was, in my 20s, my 30s. And then somehow the picture of yourself makes more sense. And that is
Yeah.
so, it brings a sense of peace, of inner
Yeah.
peace. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels that when you're connecting with what really matters to you and who you are at the in the truth, then you can handle anything that life sort of throws at you. So it doesn't mean that you
Exactly.
need a big change. It might be more of a like those small shifts sort of thing.
Mm,
And
mm,
bouncing back to what you said at the start, Tatiana, about how there might be somebody in your life that doesn't know that you're wanting to do that passion, or that that was always a thing. Music was always your thing, or you were always into playing board games, or whatever it is. Like there's so many things, reading, so many things. Then um, I've lost my thread then. This idea of like somebody maybe seeing you as being, or seeing somebody as being, oh, I didn't realise you were into that. And then, well, yeah, but my guess is that these women that you work with haven't just come up out of the blue, because these are past passions or a new passion or something that they've been thinking about that's been on their mind for a long time. And then so when they finally share it with their partner or their friend might be surprised that I didn't realise that you were into that. And then it's, well, actually, I've finally sort of revealed something about myself and connected another part of me with you. So then you're kind of
mm.
connecting with people in a very different way. But that idea of sitting with those things and not doing anything about it, is that what happens for a lot of people, would you say? Without sharing things with other people, but it's there.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because um, I think it's important that you keep things for yourself, right? You don't need to share all of you to with
No.
everyone, but somehow, especially if it's something really important for you, in a way, I would say, at least that's how I feel. Um, that there's a part of you that feels that you're not your authentic you with your friends or the ones that don't know about this. I've actually, with my writing, I very few people knew that I loved writing. Now
Yeah.
everybody knows, because I published my first book, but people were very surprised. I've always kept it for myself, because I didn't want people judging me or putting me pressure, have you finished your book or something like that. But in a way, for me, it was a great sense of freedom and liberation, telling people this is who I am, whether you like it or not, it doesn't matter. But you know this is part of me, and I love to share that this is me, and this is more authentic me, maybe than the person that you knew before. So
Yeah.
in a way, it actually brings more authenticity to your life, because you're kind of taking off a kind of costume and a layer that you is not you, right?
Yeah.
You're just saying this is me, and this is, whether you like it or not, this is me.
Yeah.
And what happens sometimes is that relationships change, friendships might change, because maybe you don't feel like you have anything in common anymore, because you've shown who you are. But what is lovely is that actually new relationships, new friendships might come up because now you've said, this is who I am, and maybe you feel more connected with other people. And that actually improves the quality of the relationships and the communities you might build, because there's a more authentic part of you that is actually, engaging with these people.
Yeah. So one of those fears that somebody might have is that it might push people away, or you might the relationship might not be the same. However, actually, there's a sense of needing to have that faith and trust that new things will come about from it. And yeah, that connection with other people when you're being like more true to yourself, that authenticity, like being more authentic to other people, you will get other people that are maybe more aligned with you and may kind of match with who you are a bit more.
Yeah,
Because I was,
sorry, I just had an alarm. I'm just turning it
oh
off.
no,
I'm
don't worry.
sorry.
I, oh, don't
It
worry.
was
Like
it was
I was just,
vibrating.
I was just thinking, one of this is another quote sort of thing, but one of the things that Brené Brown, are you familiar with her? Like, so Brené
Oh
Brown talks a
yeah.
lot about belonging and authenticity, and something that I probably butcher the phrase of this, so sorry, but this idea of belonging and being connecting with people and feeling that sense of belonging and feeling authentic, that often we try to fit in, and
Mm,
we try to fit in to groups, but actually that's sort of the opposite of belonging, because if we're trying to fit in, then we might adapt and not be genuine to who we are, and then we don't feel that sense of belonging because it's not us that's showing up. It's not our
exactly.
full selves that's showing up. Whereas going somewhere when we're maybe like really aligned with our passions, and it's like, this is me, this is who I am, this is how I'm being, and I've taken off the mask, I've like stripped down to like my core. It might feel uncomfortable for some people because that's not familiar anymore. However, actually,
Mm,
like when you're surrounded by those like-minded people, might be different people, then actually you shine more and there is more of a sense of belonging. So that's a
exactly.
bit inspired by Brené Brown, but I don't know what her quote is. But authentic connection so important, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. And I've read quite a few books from Brené Brown. I really like her point of view, and one of the big points for me is the power of vulnerability. And in a way, when, especially women, when we become people pleasers, we put ourselves a mask of someone who we are not.
Yeah,
And people see us through that mask, and people don't really know who we are. So actually opening up to, this is my passion, this is who I am, is actually being vulnerable, because people might not accept us, people might criticize us, we might not have the same relationship, we might not be accepted. So we take risks by doing that. But as you are saying, I really
yeah,
love what you say, that when we do that, when we take off the mask, we're actually our authentic us, and then the relationships are more authentic because this is who we are, right? So that's a lot of the work from Brené Brown around the power of being vulnerable, the power of taking off the mask, which I absolutely love, how she expresses it, and how it helps people be more authentic. And that's what we see a lot. I was reading about how we've become better psychologists in social media, and how we actually we have a way of seeing who's authentic and who's not, and we actually follow the people that we feel are really expressing themselves authentically. So authenticity is actually quite key, even now in these modern times, and is very related to being vulnerable and saying, this is who I am, this is what I love. If you love it, great, follow me. If you don't, there's someone else that you might like to follow. So in a way, it improves all sorts of things related to relationships, right? Is who you are. And if there's no match, then things might need to change. You might need to find other relationships that accept you the way you are. And the same with the other person. Being more authentic is so key in improving the way we relate to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. You shared about a book that you'd published. Could you share about that?
Yeah, sure.
What's that
And
about?
it's actually interesting because I hadn't realized until after I had published it that my book is around all these things actually.
Ah,
So my book is titled A Trip Towards the Sunset, and it's the story of three women in their midlife going through a journey of self-discovery. There's a lot around the bondings of sisterhood and friendship and motherhood as well. There's a lot around motherhood. And it's a story of grief and loss and self-discovery. And it's a story of going back home. I recently had a friend saying, your book is about going back home. And I really love that idea. And I thought, yeah, it's actually about going back home to who you are. So everything that we've been talking about, I actually wrote it in my novel without actually realizing that, I'm passionate about that and I wrote about that,
yeah.
in a way.
All fits together.
So yeah, yeah, and it also has sceneries from different places, from New Zealand, from Scotland, from Spain, and from Germany. They're all places close to my heart. And then the last thing that I wanted to touch on is it also explores the feelings of immigrants living far away from the home country, because it's a difficult journey of finding where home is. So
Yeah.
again, there's a moment where you don't belong neither to the country where you were born or the country where you live, and it's that journey of finding where home is. Yeah, so that's what it's
Yeah.
about.
Like people say, like home is where the heart is, but then
Mm-hmm.
actually, if you're not feeling like peace in yourself, then that could be really challenging. But oh, that
Exactly.
sounds your book sounds wonderful because it sounds like just the sort of thing that people could read to relatable and to be like realistic, like narratives of humans and those connections with the siblings, and yeah, it sounds really good. I'm not a
Thank
big
you.
I'm not a big reader, but I'm sure lots of the people listening, like, we've got a lot of people that out there that
I'm
are
a
really
big reader
interested.
myself, and I love books about transformation, people who actually, um, make big changes in their lives and they actually rediscover who they are. So I guess that's why I wrote about it, because I love reading books about
Yeah,
it as well.
that's brilliant. So this idea of rediscovering who you are and, making those changes, reconnecting, like going back home, like makes me like step towards like step into a new pace, which is what I talk about a lot with the name of this podcast being a new pace, and how often people are needing to make those changes at different times in their lives. It doesn't need to be midlife. It could be any time, and those elements of sort of taking time to pause, act, create, and empower. And I'm curious about your take on that. Whether there's something that you want to say overall, or if there's any of those particular words or ideas that resonate with you.
Oh, totally. I've actually experienced myself the need for self care and the need to pause. I used to tend to feed in too much in the day, being really efficient and really proud of being, that efficient that I've managed to do a lot. Now I'm actually, in a way, horrified. I think the quality of life is not about fitting in a lot of things, but it's about taking care of your needs. It's about pausing and appreciating life as it is. It's about taking breaks. I mentioned before the book Sustainability Success by Melinda Cohen. She actually helps coaches, and she has two wonderful books about how to improve as a coach, but this one in particular is about self-care, and it was life transforming for me. I was already including a lot of self-care in my life, but actually it made me think that it's actually a priority. It's actually the only way to keep going is to make it a priority in your life. And she was talking about a lot of things about taking breaks in between tasks, in between one client or the other, or you finish one task and you take a break, and that break could just be go outside and just sit down for 5 minutes, or it could be going for a walk, or it could be all sorts of things. So really pausing and really living a life in a way. If you think about it, all this, I'm doing this and that, and then I go to bed exhausted. This is not a life, right? But we've forgotten about that because of the speed of things, right? The speed of life, the speed of the commitments, the expectations that we have, and we need to actually go back to the opposite, go back to creativity. And that comes back to another book. I don't know if you're familiarized with Martha Beck.
Oh no.
So Martha Beck is a coach in the United States, and she's written amazing books. And the one I'm referring to is called Beyond Anxiety. And she was talking about left brain and right brain. And she was saying that this obsession with left brain has led us to the spiral of anxiety. So actually we do, many of us experience anxiety because of just doing left brain, and kind of tasks, whereas we need to be more balanced and do more right brain, so creative work, um, because that brings you to, I think she was calling it the spiral of creativity, that brings a sense of peace and a sense of calm. So in a way, by bringing back any kind of creative work, we actually shift things inside our brain that make us live in a more slow motion life, in a way, more peaceful, and bringing more self-care, more joy, more fulfillment. So in a way, there's somewhere there between those all those lines where,
Yeah.
by bringing back something creative to our lives, we actually take better care of ourselves and we pace ourselves in a different way, because you can't make a painting in 5 minutes, right? You need your time, you need to prepare, you need, or maybe you can, but in a way, what I mean is that you can't rush things.
Yeah.
You need to do things, need their pace, and a flower needs its time to become a flower, from a seed to growing, and a tree needs their time, and we need that time as well. And we have forgotten that important lesson from nature. We need our time. We also need our time to mature, right? So everything needs time, and in a way, bringing back time to our lives is one of the greatest gifts that we can give ourselves. So I completely agree with, that sense of pace and rest. And and in a way, I also wanted to share that for many, many years, I had people, I remember a naturopath telling me, you need to take care of yourself, And I would say, okay, so at midday, I'm going to take a break and go for a walk. And I would do that, and I would feel much better, and I was able to deal with things better. But the following day, things would be busy at work, and I would just skip the walk. This is the same as abandoning your passion in a way.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't do that, so I would go back and forth all the time. And at some stage in my life when things became really, really tricky, I realized the only way to keep going is actually to take care of myself. And that includes not only exercise, but it includes writing, right?
Yeah.
It includes the things that bring joy to your life. And that actually opens up a sense of peace, a sense of calm, a sense of meaning and purpose. All these kind of things are related, I believe.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And just being able to take time to, to really prioritize. That's the thing from that, is to really prioritize what's going to fill your cup. So rather than it being self-care as a means to then get more done later, to rest so that you can do more of those left brain activities, the functional activities, the things that you feel that you should be doing, actually like dedicating time to your passions and to your creativity and to those things that really leave you fulfilled is what, like, it's an essential. Like you said, it's a priority. It's not, self-care is not selfish at all, and it's not just about bubble baths as like lots of people think, but it's finding that special thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and you've touched an important point, which is about selfishness, especially for us as women. We feel like taking care of ourselves is being selfish, so that's why it's so hard to go beyond that. But realizing that it's not only better for us, it's better for everyone else, and everyone else notices. If you fill up your cup, your relationships are going to be better. You're going to be a better partner, a better sister, a better daughter, a better mother, because you feel better yourself.
Yeah.
And then another thing I learned about a few months ago is give from the overflow. That has completely transformed me, because for me that's the key, right? Because sometimes we might, I don't know, go for a walk and then things become really tricky, and there's a moment where we could even unconsciously we could be resentful with the other person because the little bit that we filled up our cup has already drained by dealing with something difficult at work or with our kids or something like that. Whereas if we find a way to every day give to ourselves, then there's plenty of energy for everyone. There's plenty of energy for you. There's plenty of energy for everyone else. So it's a win-win situation, right? So it's not a matter of, I'm doing this for myself and I won't do anything until, a month or something like that. And then you go from, full or a little bit full to empty, and then up and down and then up and down, or needing to take 2 weeks of a break at work because you're completely drained. On the contrary, if every day you're filling up your cup, even if it's just a little bit, then you're always overflowing, and then there's energy for everyone. You feel joyful, you feel fulfilled, and you can give generously. You can give, not feeling resentful because there's plenty. And this is in a way related to the notion of abundance, right? there's plenty for everyone. There's plenty of energy. There's plenty of joy for everyone. We just need to, in a way, I would say maybe it's our responsibility to make sure that our cup is overflowing. And if everybody's cup was overflowing, this would be a much better world.
Yeah. And look, yeah, it makes so much difference, doesn't it, when people are able to give because their cups are full, rather than feeling like really drained and like feeling like really
Mm,
stuck. And I was thinking that once somebody's doing those things, then it's probably easier to keep going. What would you suggest? Any tips or anything to like that people might do to get started, sort of thing? If they're
mm.
thinking, I want to do that, but I haven't done it for years. How do I get started? What would I do? It feels like that could be important.
Yeah, definitely. And many people have tried and it hasn't worked. So it's really key, to know how to start. I think the problem here is that um, in this case, women who are thinking about bringing something back to their lives, let's say painting, they're imagining having a room for themselves. They're imagining having a whole day or half a day to be undisturbed, painting and inspired every week. And that doesn't work, right? We have busy lives, we might have small kids, it just doesn't work as an adult. As a kid it might have worked, as an adult it just doesn't work. And the problem is that we idealize, this situation that never happens, so then we don't start. So
Yeah.
that's the problem. We never start. And then we don't get the momentum from having done, gone back to something that we love to do. So what I tell my clients is to actually do the opposite. Start with very small chunks. Like I say, 15 minutes. And people
Yeah.
might say, in 15 minutes I don't do anything, right? So why do I bother to start? But if you start with these small chunks of time and maybe you actually commit to doing that daily or as daily as you can, then you would start feeling the benefits from it. You will start feeling, yeah, you're feeling more joyful, you're feeling more fulfilled because you brought something important back to your life. And then once you start, feeling all these benefits, then is when you say, okay, I want to dedicate more time. I want to
Yeah.
take that class, or I want to increase this to half an hour, or maybe I want to do, I don't know, 1 hour over the weekend or something like that. Once you have noticed the benefits of that with small chunks of time, then is when in a way, then is when you prioritize it because you realize that you're happy with that. That is making you, is really bringing a lot of benefits for you. And then when you prioritize it, is when you make the space to include more of that in your life. And then is when you can make decisions. Okay, I'm going to buy some material. I'm going to take this course. I'm going to call this person that can help me. I'm going to organize it in a way that there's more of that in your life. But start
Yeah.
really, really small. That is the first advice that I give to people.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you won't start, and then you don't get anywhere, right? So it actually really helps even with 15 minutes a day. Be, um, and it could include things like visualization, it could include journaling, it could include, doing some drafting. Anything that is related to that passion of yours is a great way to start.
Yeah. Exactly. Just starting small, and then kind of when it maybe becomes a point where you're needing to be a bit disciplined to do it, even just 5 or 10, 15 minutes. And then after a while, once you get into the routine of it, it can become part of you and part of what is natural in your life, sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, And one thing important, and I think you mentioned that before, is not to turn that into another chore or another task that you need to do. This is
Yes.
something that you're passionate about, which means that ideally do it as daily as you can. But if one day it doesn't work, don't beat yourself up because of that. What is important is to bring the awareness. So the day I don't write, sometimes I choose, today I cannot fit it in, or for whatever reason I decide not to do it, but I'm aware of that. I'm aware that today I haven't written, and I feel that, I feel that hole in my life because that is missing. But I make sure that tomorrow I will have more time, or that tomorrow I will make the time for that. So not beating ourselves up is really, really important, because then we turn that into another to do, right? We include it
Yeah.
in our to do list, and this is completely the opposite. So it's really important to take that into account. Is you're not accountable to anyone else except for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So just thinking about now, and just thinking about kind of like how you're sort of working with people. If people were wanting to work with you now, what sort of things would they be able to access, or what sort of things would they how might people be able to work with you or consume your content sort of thing as well?
Sure. So I've got coaching sessions, both individual and coaching packages. So 4 or 6 sessions where I work with people in whatever they'd like to work with, but mostly around life purpose and career change, and bringing back passions to their lives. But on top of that, I do some webinars. So I have regularly I give some free webinars, and also soon on the next week on the 28th of October, I'm opening up an online course that I offer regularly, a 5-week online course on rediscovering long forgotten dreams, that I call, which is precisely what we have been talking about. It's a step-by-step process to bring back a passion to your life. So that's one of the things that I offer, and I've actually put a lot of effort and personal experience there, because, as I said before, I would have loved to have someone next to me helping me bring back right into my life. I had a lot of setbacks. It was
Yeah.
a really difficult process for me, and I figured out that there's a way to actually do it in a consistent way to make sure that you have it in your life. So I'm actually quite passionate about helping other women find their
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, that sounds like you doing something that you could have really benefited from yourself, and that's where a lot of people that are in the coaching and well-being industry, therapists, are the ones that be the person that you needed yourself, sort of thing.
Yeah, and it feels really nice, because in a way, it's almost as if you were coaching yourself a few years ago, right? So but the nice thing is that you know exactly what fears, what setbacks, what limiting beliefs, your clients are going through, because you have gone through them yourself. And it's actually quite inspiring working with someone uh, that has gone through that same process and knows exactly where you will stumble against an obstacle, where you need some extra help, all these kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So before we finish, do you have any sort of particular, like specific keywords, or something that you'd like to say to everybody to maybe just help them right now, or something to like that might spark something in them, something what's really important to you to share?
Sure. So my business is called Puyaki Precious, and Puyaki is a Maori name that means precisely that, precious. So what I'd like to share is that everybody is precious. Everybody has a treasure within them, and sometimes we forget about that. Sometimes we're going through very hard times and we think we're not, we don't have any worth. But all of us have an immense worth, and we're all a treasure. And bringing back passions to your life is a way of rediscovering that treasure of who we all are. So what I tend to say is bring back your passions, have your passions alive in your life, and we're all a treasure, so don't forget that.
Thank you so much. Those words just felt so wholehearted. Like I was just listening to them and just feeling it feels so special, and like just to thank you to come on and thank the audience and everyone that's listened for their time. And what speaking with you, Tatiana's taught me is that actually anybody can reignite with those passions and reconnect with those things, and just starting with just 15 minutes can make a whole lot of difference. So if you resonate with what Tatiana's been talking about and what we've been talking about with creativity and those shifts and those changes, then by all means reach out. And thank you so much for listening to the podcast today, and speak to you soon. Bye bye.